I would like to introduce my lovely panelists. This is Colleen Berube, who's the Chief Information Officer of Zendesk, and this is Cathy Southwick, who's the Chief Information Officer for Pure Storage. Thank you both so much for being here. So, there is a lot of hype that's around 5G these days, and I thought it was really interesting to delve into how companies and CIOs are actually thinking about this technology. And so, Colleen, I want to start with you. I'm wondering, since Zendesk makes applications that people can, download and access through their phones, what types of opportunities are you guys thinking of on ways to leverage the greater speeds and potential of 5G?
Yeah, the promise of a continuous, high quality, reliable connection, mobile connection, opens up the possibility to really think about much more contextual and immersive experiences and how we can personalize those experiences.
Mm-hmm. And Cathy, you came from AT&T and came relatively recently to Pure Storage. So I'm wondering, how did that experience of being at a telco that, apologies to our sponsor, is also pretty instrumental in rolling out 5G. How did that experience influence the way you think about what opportunities Pure Storage may have to take advantage?
Yeah, it actually kind of helps shape how I think about things going forward. I spent the better part of 20 years at AT&T and actually having just left there last summer and joining Pure Storage, you start to think about what's going to be eventually what's possible. And I think that's our biggest opportunity is it's starting to think now about what will eventually come. So building on what we can do today in our capabilities, but really being able to start thinking about what are the applications that will change? How will our company have to think about the type of technology we provide, speed, reliability, all those things that are so important, and then coupling that with the capabilities of 5G, it's going to be very powerful for us in the future. Mm-hmm.
There's a broad expectation that 5G will enable the Internet of Things, which will, perhaps lead to more automation in the workplace. And I think that's just part of a broader conversation that we've been having about automation in the workplace, whether it is a robot that's actually physically in a factory or, if you make software, artificial intelligence, and different ways to automate. Colleen, I'm wondering how you guys are thinking about what increased automation of all types means for jobs at Zendesk.
Well, it's a very relevant topic because we're a pretty fast-growing company, and so automation at every turn is a focus for us. We really look to find the best opportunities to take advantage of automation at every turn. And what it has meant for us is that we're able to get people focused on higher order work, have them have more time to focus on analysis, to focus on thinking strategically, to be creative, as opposed to doing sort of the rote mundane work.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah, I was just going to comment on that. So I think the benefit that both of us have at I'll say a more younger company where you haven't had the legacy of 50 years or 20 years or 100 years. Your workforce looks differently, and what you're working on is a little different. So our challenge is that because you're growing so quickly, you have to be able to have automation as your first stop. It's not about job replacement or about elimination, and it's really not even about cost. It's really about enabling your business to kind of keep moving quickly. So the agility is really the big key for it. So for us, we actually look at automation as it's kind of first order. And then second is, and that takes people to do that, so higher skill sets to be able to do that. But that's kind of the key to it, is saying you've got to make sure that you start first with those capabilities. And all of us at different companies and the different time frames or age of your company have different challenges for automation. But we certainly have the same ones as far as think that first, because you don't have all the resources, and we're all challenged with getting talent in the workplace.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's absolutely true that when we think about what types of jobs there will be, it's likely that companies will require more specialized skills. Mm-hmm. The problem is not everyone may have those specialized skills. I'm wondering, Colleen, how you guys at Zendesk think about either training or retraining existing workers when, there is a new technology that comes online, and you guys, as a pretty agile software maker, say, we want to take advantage of that.
There's a couple things. First of all, when we look at hiring folks, we really, of course, because we're a technology company, we're always looking for knowledge in a certain domain space, a certain level of technical proficiency, certain skills. That doesn't change. But we've enhanced how we think about hiring to also include soft skills. How comfortable are the individuals with change? How resourceful are they in looking at a problem and solving it? And we consider that a key indicator of success at Zendesk. And as we go through changes where people need to change, it's built into the culture. We're an innovation organization. We look for and expect people inside the organization to continuously be trying new things. We, by definition, are trying new technologies all the time and determining if they'll work for us or not. So it's really bred into our culture.
Mm-hmm. And Cathy, how are you doing, thinking about retraining, particularly, tech skills in your department at Pure Storage?
Yeah, it's interesting because before, you're right, you would typically hire for a specific domain or a specific technology experience or capability, and those are kind of considered table stakes. Those have to exist, and you expect that. I think one thing that I've seen, even in the transition from coming out of one of the large carriers into Pure, is it's no longer about having a single skill set. So soft skills are super important, but it's also about think about the hybrid technology of cloud and being able to go 4G to 5G. All these things that now are not singular, they're very hybrid in nature. We actually are looking for talent that has that. So if you had a network engineer for us before, those skills aren't necessarily the same type of skills that we needed before. We still need those because we still have some of that physical. But now those individuals need to have skills that might be more geared towards software development, so software engineers. So the blending of skills and having hybrid capabilities, that's the other part of the talent, is trying to not just encourage your teams to think about where they're going next, but also to start bridging, what's possible. If you think about all the industries, whether it's been healthcare, or the science fields, et cetera. A chemist before was might have been very physical. Well, now there's a lot of analytics that go into it. So you need to have software skills. You can be able to do some of the analysis yourself. We're seeing the same thing in our business as well.
Mm-hmm. One of the panelists from the previous panel spoke about the company's Zoom video communications, which went public last week. And, it has been really interesting to see how many companies have adopted Zoom, and it's also enabling people to work remotely and not be in Silicon Valley where the rents are very high and salaries are higher. I'm wondering, Colleen, how you guys think about what 5G and faster connections could mean for the way that you guys actually, arrange your workforce, where people are located geographically, the likelihood that you guys are okay with someone, working remotely, being in Nashville, even if you guys don't have an office there.
Well, first of all, I have to share with you, and I'm sure Cathy will agree, any CIO will tell you is that the conference room is like the albatross on their back. It has been for years. You go to an interview for a CIO job and they want to talk to you about why the conference room doesn't work. So that's why we love Zoom. It's so easy, right? But to answer your question, we definitely anticipate, we're a global organization already. We have 16 offices around the world, offices in many other locations. And while I don't anticipate that 5G will cause us to fundamentally rethink our labor strategy, I do think it will open up possibilities for working differently. Today we have probably the best you have is to sort of get a couple of videos on the screen and hope the audio is connecting with it. I think that we'll just see that improve and find more interactive and immersive ways to work together.
Mm-hmm. And Cathy, why doesn't the conference room ever work?
Don't ask. No, it's funny. We also use Zoom, and it's having coming out of environments where we have, there's always, all of us, we all use different kinds of collaboration tools. So I think that the notion that a particular type of technology will change everything we do in our workforce is probably for that same reason at the conference room. There's the right fit and the right place for it. I think what we'll start to see is, again, I kind of look at it as the enablement. It's going to allow us to do some things. So whether it's remote workers or it's a different way of collaborating, there's still going to be always the need to have people to meet, human to human, and I think that's an important aspect. But I think we'll start to see, again, as we talked about, the form factor and the devices today of a phone and what that changes when you start to evolve. Same thing will happen with our workspaces, but I think you'll still see most companies will still have, hubs or primary locations, and then you'll look to figure out, how do you keep branching out, whether it's for talent pools, it's for centers of excellence, where it's a particular knowledge or characteristic you're trying to, solve for. I think you'll see the combination. So I don't think it's a either or. I think it's a continual evolution, and again, we'll see a whole new breed of collaboration tools that will be enabled, and so that could change some of the things that we do as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, both of your companies sell, goods or services and hardware to other businesses. And, Zendesk has an interesting model because there are lots of incoming, customers who may choose to, start small and more of a land and expand model, and then you grow. But, technology, including 5G, could mean that it's even easier to handle perhaps larger sales more remotely. And I'm wondering, in this era in which it feels like in some ways we're getting more detached, sort of personally human to human, is it still a fantastic thing from Zendesk's perspective that 5G could mean that you could sort of land big deals without having to pay for all of the airfare, or if that human touch is still important to you guys?
What I would share with you is what we've learned through our experience at Zendesk. If you ask customers, do they prefer human touch, overwhelmingly they'll say yes. But the evidence shows that actually wherever you can provide ease in the experience and automation, that the combination of doing that for simple things with the human touch where it matters most is the combination that results in the happiest customers.
And Cathy, do you have views on, whether for the sales process, you guys will try to leverage, technology more and sell remotely, or whether the human touch still matters?
Yeah, I think the biggest point is what Colleen said, and that is, meeting your customers where they want to be met. For us, sometimes that's in person, sometimes it's on a call, sometimes it's through an enablement through, perhaps a cloud service. So no longer having to have your physical, as an example, storage on-prem or your physical assets on-prem. That is an option, but what if you were able to have it on-prem and within a public cloud if that was what you chose to do? So I think that the way that we go to market and the way that our customers want to consume is where we're trying to meet them in the market. So again, being able to kind of bridge across whatever makes sense and whatever makes sense for the services, because some of them should be as easy as some of us do today, where you might have a one-touch order for a capability that you go, oh gosh, tomorrow my whatever it is, home products are going to show up at the house versus, what I'm trying to do to enable my business and have that same kind of experience. That consumer enterprise blending is, I think, what we're starting to see more of.
I do think we'll continue to see a trend of giving the customer empowerment around determining how they want to engage and giving them that flexibility. I think we'll continue to see that expand.
And Cathy, you brought up, cloud computing in your answer there. And I think it's always important to keep in mind that, 5G is part of a tapestry of ascendant technologies that businesses are thinking about leveraging. I'm wondering, I'd be sort of keen to know if you think about, cloud computing, which has really emerged as a force in the last decade and a half, and 5G, which is, sort of coming online in real time. Which do you think could be more consequential or important for business?
That's a great question. I'm not sure that I think one or the other is more important. I think it's part of the ecosystem. So what cloud enabled us to do was to start rethinking how we manage workloads on-prem, and this notion that I could move workloads somewhere else. I could do them at different, cost profiles. I could do them at different capabilities for my customers. And that really gives you that, kind of that first foray into thinking about a distributed type of environment what I think 5G is going to allow us to do is start to think about what happens when the edge compute is in place. So it's that closer to the customer, that, that last mile, that last experience that all of us, want to figure out, how do you make it the best? So whether you're a consumer and you're doing, gaming at home, or you're a business and you're trying to figure out how to, as I mentioned on the earlier panel, around manufacturing and supply chain. So I think the real value is that it's the ability as a business. And so for those of us as CIOs, you're trying to figure out, how do I make sure that I put the right workloads in the right place to get the best experience, whether it's for internal or it's, for being able to quickly develop new capabilities like Zendesk does, or it's to allow our customers easier access to us. So I think it's both. I think it's kind of exciting, and the things that we'll be able to do once 5G is fully deployed, I mean, it will take some years, but we'll start to get that experience, just like we did with, having public cloud environments. And then being able to say, well, now I have an on-prem private, I have a public cloud, so now I have my hybrid solution, and now I have the ability to go all the way to the edge. Completely different type of use cases that we'll be able to do to support our business and customers. Mm-hmm.
And Colleen, you work at a cloud computing company. I'm wondering, when you think about, as CIO, adopting new technologies for the business, what's the process like? What are the considerations? How do you guys make these types of decisions?
We have a philosophy to keep an environment that's very flexible and open and allows us to try new technologies all the time. It's by design made that way. And so we take into consideration how it's going to best serve whatever we're considering it for. Obviously, we look at will it be able to scale with us, but we don't get too caught up in thinking of any particular technology decision as a massive decision that's going to last for years. We err more on the side of, will it work for us for a period of time, and then there will be something better. So really creating that kind of environment and backbone that can handle that kind of change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Cathy, with all of your experience at AT&T, I mean, you saw, different eras of technology. I'm wondering how that informs the way that you think about, sort of the new hot thing.
Yeah, it's a very good company. T-Mobile, all the service providers, they've done a stellar job of kind of bringing technology to all of the businesses and then consumers. So I think that is a backdrop of having the service providers as being innovative. And being on we don't often think of them as innovative necessarily. We think of, it's the service provider, they just provide the network, it's the it's the backdrop, but it's kind of like oxygen, it has to be there or nothing else works. So when I think about coming into Pure Storage, the challenge, or I should say the benefit I have, is it's a relatively young company, less than 10 years old. I kind of call it my gift, in that you don't have a lot of the legacy or technology debt that a lot of other companies who are much older have. And so for us, we're, like Colleen was saying, you have this amazing ability to take technology, figure out, are things good enough that I don't have to have things all gold-plated, I don't have to have every aspect covered, but if I can have it enable my business, and then I can figure out how that I can keep it very agile, so I can either replace, I can interoperate with something else. That's where you want to be, is that ability. So I think companies like ours that are a little bit on the younger side of their evolution and the growth that we're seeing, we have to quickly adopt and think about what new technology is around and how we can incorporate it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what do you think, Cathy, for what 5G could mean for corporate cybersecurity, which is, obviously an important part of your job and a big consideration these days?
Yeah, I mean, securing the enterprise, like probably many of you, it's one of our pillars for Pure Storage is, how do we make sure that we're securing our enterprise? As we think about 5G, it's no different than any other technology. You're going to start to think now about what do I have to do to prepare. So with the proliferation of IoT devices, how does that interact? What's going to happen? What happens with the network fabric? Will more things move into the network from a security perspective versus do I have to care for more at my application level? I think you have to kind of think about it in all those layers. So the fabric, the hardware infrastructure, and then also the application layer. So I think all of us are starting to really look at it and say, we know what some of our current challenges are. Definitely 5G is going to introduce things because we hadn't seen it before. So we'll see some things that before there might be some latency where I might be able to have capabilities to either uncover or discover that something is going on, then I'm going to have capabilities closer to the source that have that same capability instead of waiting until it gets further back, closer to, I'll say, your core computer, what you're actually trying to perform.
Mm-hmm. You said you know what some of your challenges are currently. I mean, how do you think about your current cybersecurity challenges, or what's top of mind for you if you are sort of in a meeting about cybersecurity?
And I'm sure Colleen has some of these same challenges. One of the things that we, because we are a company we're highly a SaaS-based, so most of our applications, we use Zoom, we use a number of other service providers. We have a lot of dependency on our vendor or supplier community. So meaning that we have to do inspection of what they're doing, likewise they do the same of us. And it's really making sure that we understand where either risk points might be. Obviously, always protecting customer data and employee data is, top of mind. And I think for all companies, we're continually looking at how do you make sure that the people that we interact with and that we're consuming, so whether it's a T-Mobile, or any other provider or any other product in the market, you've got to make sure that you have the same level of expectations and that you're able to inspect what they're doing as well. And that's a big point for us.
Mm-hmm. And Colleen, as both a vendor and also just a company in your own right, thinking about cybersecurity, and perhaps Cathy's giving you a call and saying, "What are you guys doing with our customer data?" How do you guys think about cybersecurity? What are the threats that you may be most concerned about?
I think what we're expecting is that the threats may not fundamentally change, but the speed with which they happen and the nature of them in terms of the risk will change. And so I think it's going to put pressure on everyone to move further away from human responses to those exploits, and rather to really figure out how we better leverage technology to respond. There's a lot today that companies still do that requires humans to be involved to respond to those issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. The AI component is going to be really important. So while a lot of us do that today with, taking data, being able to do, looking for bad actors, behaviors, things that don't look right, I think the speed, and you're not going to be able to have humans in all cases intervene. So some of the technology being able to push it closer to the edge, whether it's AI or it's a different form of, ML, I think that's what's really going to be the enabler. And you can't do that unless you have that edge computing capability. So that's why it kind of all dovetails together to kind of help us evolve.
And since we have, other business leaders in the room, I'm wondering if there are any preferred tools that you may like from particular vendors when it comes to cybersecurity, or, that AI that may help you detect threats, for instance.
Are we allowed to tell all our secrets? So, it's interesting. We actually do a lot of experimentation with being in the Valley. Our company is located in Mountain View. We have access, and really easy access, to a lot of the new startups and VCs that are kind of bringing new tech out, saying, hey, is this going to work? Whether it's RPA, it's security, et cetera. So I think we have a huge benefit we have access to a lot of innovators right here in Silicon Valley to say, hey, this is the kind of thing we're looking at. What do you think? So there's we've worked with a couple companies. I'm not going to name companies because some of them are, but we've worked with some companies who are doing some interesting things with sensors, putting in IoT devices in buildings. And while that doesn't sound like, that doesn't sound like a very big deal, what they're actually allowing us to do is gather data about, so what's happening in this room and what does it look like? Who are all the devices? Doing a match against what our inventory looks like to say these are all pure storage devices versus these are devices that are unknown. We don't know why they're here. Could be nothing, could be something. So that's one example. And then the analytics from that. So again, to Colleen's point, you can't do this stuff with all humans. So it has to be that you're teaching, learning, like, okay, these devices are safe, these are okay, what's on your network. So that's just from an internal. From an external, we're using some companies who are helping us to look at mass amounts of data, closest to the edge for us, on the network, to say what's occurring and what's happening that we can look at. So being able to do profiles, looking at suspicious behavior. All of a sudden, we see a number of applications that we use that are SaaS applications, or they're ones that our employees have downloaded and are using to store documents. And we're going, why are all of a sudden all these documents being moved external to the company and onto a public domain? So again, can't do that with humans all the time. So using some companies who are really looking at that and trying to help us figure out, what do we need to be cautious of and think about before we actually have some of those issues.
Mm-hmm. That sounds really interesting, actually, the device point. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I'd like to thank my panel, Cathy Southwick and Colleen Berube. Thank you.